everybody, this video is to cover task number 2. So I'm going to go through and narrate the task, give you guys some pointers, some tips, some hints to help you succeed really well in this particular task. Okay, so task number 2 is called Diverse Perspectives on Rhetoric and Composition, an Exploratory Case Study. So in this case, you're going to collect data by asking questions, and then you're going to write about that data. Those are very specific steps that have very specific ways of thinking about the approach to make sure that you're as non-biased as you can possibly be. This does not need to be a statistically significant sample. It's just we want to attempt to take as much bias out of our sampling approach as we possibly can so that the data we do have can have really strong conclusions that aren't open to significant amount of criticism because of our approach to collecting that particular data. So your goal for task number 2 is to determine how the concepts and ideas that your colleagues have about writing can be integrated with the readings that we have done in modules 1 and 2. To accomplish this, you will need to do a case study, which for this paper is defined as collecting data or information about a specific topic from individuals or groups of participants by talking to them, observing them, or collecting writing samples from them. A case study essay, similar to other kinds of essay, asks you to do research, do analysis, and write a report. So for this particular study, you're going to need to decide what question you want to address, what data will then be relevant, and then how you're going to collect the data. So if we ask a series of people what is writing or what is composition, what is the best approach to composition, what is the best approach to teaching writing, what is the best approach to assessing writing, what is it you other teachers look for when you grade essays? I mean, there are a lot of different things that we can collect or that we can ask about, and all of the readings can support that. So it's really important that you nail down your research question really early. Feel free to tag me on Twitter with your research question and I will absolutely add my comments. The second part to this is how are you going to collect the data? And this is really, really, really important. Obviously, one of the easiest ways to collect data would be Twitter or Facebook. One of the hugest problems with collecting data in either of those two programs is they're very, very public. So if you ask a question like, what is wrong with the current approach to teaching composition in high school in Phoenix? How many of your fellow teachers are actually going to respond to that question? Probably very few, maybe by direct message, but you're asking fellow teachers with that particular question to critique a system that they currently work for in a public venue. That's not a comfortable situation for most people. So you really want to consider how you're collecting data and how you're phrasing your question. What is it that you're looking for in a question? Or even in a question, if I said, what is wrong with the current approach in teaching composition at the 12th grade level? Sorry to my 12th grade teachers, this is just the first question that came to my mind. I'm already assuming that there's something wrong. If I'm a teacher and I've been a teacher in that particular system for 10 plus years and I feel like my students are well prepared for college, now you're attacking me with your question. You're assuming that I don't know how to do my job, and that hurts. That's not the kind of assumption that I want you to make. So now I'm less likely to answer your question, or I'm not going to give you the answer that you're looking for because you've already directly attacked me, even accidentally. Now, I don't think that any of you will go to that extreme. These are the kinds of ideas that we want to think about as we're drafting our questions, as we're figuring out what data it is we want to collect. So if we want to collect participant responses or if we want to collect writing samples, and then how we're going to collect the data. Depending on the question we ask, publicly collecting information may seem easier, but it might not be the right approach. We might want to ask our students a question about what they think about writing and then go from there, just collect their responses. But either way, be sure that the question you ask directly relates to the data that you're expecting, and that you know how to collect it in a way that'll be meaningful so that you're not immediately open to critique. So again, you don't need to have a statistically significant sample. I think you need, we'll get to how many responses is a good set of responses. What you do really want to consider is what are the people that you're asking that question to going to read into the question? How are they going to understand the question? How are they going to contextualize the question? And then where's the best place to ask them that particular question listener to collect that piece of data. Okay, so to continue on, now that you have a better idea of the kinds of questions that you need to ask and the way that your data collection and the data you're expecting relates to the methodology and the question asked, the remainder of the assignment, so you need to research the topic beforehand so that you know what's already been asked so that you're not just repeating. Even if you do repeat, you have a different sample selection than some of these other studies, so just be aware of that when you actually write this up. Make sure that you talk to people. Don't just ask yes or no questions. Your goal with this paper is not to report, yes, everybody agrees that composition needs to be taught. That's not very helpful. Ask a good question that can gather a lot of different data. Analyze the information from your case study and the readings that we've done in class. So use the readings from class to help you analyze the data. Don't forget, when you're dealing specifically with rhetorical theory and the way that we address rhetorical theory, early rhetorical theory, especially early Greek rhetorical theory, is an empiricism, not a criticism. So we can't use ethos, pathos, and logos to then understand or critique the people who provide us responses in this particular study. You'll want to focus more heavily on the composition side for this one, unless you're dealing specifically with rhetoric, in which case just don't use rhetorical theory as a criticism. Present concrete narrative and descriptive detail of the actual conversation and events. Set the scene. Contextualize the information so we know how to understand the data and even what drove you to ask the question that you did. That's really important. Provide an analysis of the information. Don't just report your findings. Tell us what they mean. You always need to explain to your reader what you expect your reader to get out of a paper. The two big questions that rhetorical papers always ask is, so what and why does it matter? So you really need to tell me with this, so why am I supposed to care about this information that you've collected, and why does it matter? What did you expect to get out of it, and where did you expect it to be impactful? Connect your case studies to data in the readings from modules 1 and 2. So considerations. For your write-up, you'll need to choose a focus that you will clarify in your thesis sentence. Here are some for you to think about before you get started. What have I learned from the readings that I would like to explore in more detail with my colleagues? This could be a specific pedagogical approach. Bartholomew's is always a really important study where he talks about how do we create the context every time we sit down to write. That could be the question that you ask. What topic we addressed in the reading seems especially pertinent to your current or future job. Both of these are really important. If you're looking for upward mobility, or if you're looking to land the dream job, ask a question that's going to help you do that. Give yourself more content to discuss in interviews or in review meetings, stuff that you can add to your review meeting. If you study something in relation to your students or in relation to fellow teachers that you can then add to your yearly review that can help you, go for it. Kill two birds with one stone, but don't actually kill birds. What are my assumptions about rhetoric and writing, and do these assumptions influence how I interact with my colleagues, my student, or my boss? So I've been emphasizing this over and over and over in this video. What assumptions are you making in your question? What assumptions are you making about data? What assumptions are you making about the reading? What could your listeners assume also? Both of those are really, really important because they could accidentally potentially leave you open to critique, which is not something you want. How will the newly gained knowledge from my discussion with colleagues help me with my own understanding? Here's the so what, why does it matter? So make sure you explain that. Resources, make sure you conduct a case study, so an interview, an observation, or a collection of writing samples. There are all sorts of variations within these three approaches. So if you have questions about that, be sure to just send me a message on Twitter. Let's have these ones as public discussions through the course hashtag. Just tag my Twitter handle so that everybody can see when somebody's asking a question. There are no dumb questions with this conducting a study. This could be the very first case study any of you have ever done, and that's absolutely fine. Let's try and see what happens. Integrate your case study data into your essay, so you're going to use a combination of readings from class as well as the data that you collected as support for the overall argument that you make in this particular paper. You need to use at least 5 texts from modules 1 and 2. It's 5 total, not 5 from each, and this will show your understanding of the reading and that you're making connections to current day. So parts of your essay: introduction, body, conclusion. Your introduction should introduce your theory, and then you're also going to want to introduce the background on how you collected and how you arrived at your question. The body's going to report all of your findings, and then the conclusion is going to be, here's what you need to do with this. As with the other tasks, this is going to be 3 to 5 pages double spaced. There are specific questions for this cover letter. Don't forget to address all of these cover letter questions when you submit your final paper, and then you will upload it to BB Learn. So again, get started on this early. Start thinking about your research questions today because I'm posting the video. So today is February 3rd. Start posting questions because you'll want to give yourself enough time to actually collect data. If you have questions about case study approaches, post them publicly on Twitter and I'll start addressing them this afternoon. I will see you guys on Twitter and in the discussion boards.